My name is Margaret Hayden. I'm a primary care doctor here and director of the Medical Center Hour, which is a program of UVA Center for Health, Communities, and Ethics. Today's event is the annual Jessie, Stewart, Richardson Memorial Lecture, and I want to take just a couple minutes to share about the origins of this endowed lecture because it's a special event. Mrs. Richardson, a former school teacher, tragically lost her life from a series of medical errors after a procedure at UVA Hospital in the 1990s. In an incredibly generous response to a family tragedy, Mrs. Richardson's son, Dr. Don Richardson, endowed this lectureship as a way to honor his mother's legacy of education and teaching, and to create space for more conversations about medical error, patient safety, and quality in healthcare. This lectureship has now been running annually for over 25 years. The Richardson family's generosity has transformed personal loss into a lasting legacy that continues to inspire learning, reflection, and guides all of us to be better and to improve our care and systems continuously, all in the service of patient-centeredness. We are extra grateful for Dr. Richardson's attendance today and his ongoing commitment to these issues. One more brief word about the session. As you all have learned, we have Zoom and in-person participants. For those on Zoom, use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, and if we have time at the end, I'll convey some of those questions in person. Now I'm delighted to turn things over to Dr. Margaret Sandy to introduce today's distinguished speaker. Dr. Hayden.
Perfect. Good day, everybody. I'm Margaret Sandy. I am an emergency physician clinically and a patient safety officer here at the Medical Center. I am so pleased to have a chance to introduce Mike BUNDY. Mike's coming to us from Columbia, South Carolina, where he serves as CEO for Prisma Health, overseeing a swath of hospitals there on the 4 campuses in the Midlands market area. He also is a senior consultant with Value Capture, and we are so glad to have him be able to come and share with us his experience as it relates to quality, throughput, efficiency, his military experience and background, as it has informed his practice. And looking forward to what you have to share today. And thank you, I should say, for your patience, given the challenges of today. Makes us extra excited to hear what you have to say, and extra special given that this is the Richardson Quality Lecture. So without further ado, Mike BUNDY. Yes.
All that, I couldn't jump this computer at all. So audio is the phone, right? So I need to have the phone.
I think so.
All right. So we're going to put the phone in my pocket and make sure it still works. And so if there's a problem, thank you, Dr. Richardson, for the opportunity to be here, for the amazing legacy of continued education. I appreciate it and appreciate being part of it. So I'm going to fast forward through the first little bit of this to get us caught up, and I hope that I don't lose anything kind of in the work. There's 3 premises from one of my mentors, Mr. Paul O'Neill Sr. Mr. O'Neill was CEO of Alcoa in Tennessee and 34 other locations across the globe, and a visionary in safety, and has safety and could impact all the other things that businesses, hospitals, any other product line could impact: productivity, efficiency, quality, et cetera. And there were three kind of rules that stuck with me from my learnings with Mr. O'Neill. And the first one is that organizations can't be compartmentally excellent. You're either excellent at everything you do, or you're not as excellent as you could be. The second premise was, with leadership, anything is possible, and without it, nothing is. And I still believe that in my heart of hearts, and I believe that transcends the organization's mission, culture, or product. And then the last one is the importance that every individual in an organization that is going to be habitually excellent can answer this question as well as 2 others with an affirmative or a yes. And that is, I am respected for the contribution that I make to the team, regardless of my educational attainment, role in the organization, or any other demographic. And so that means that the environmental services worker receives the exact same level of respect as the chief of neurosurgery and neurosciences. And that truly exceptional organizations can say yes to the thing. I'm going to talk to you today about a premise, and I want to just spend 1 minute to kind of focus the premise around all the places that it's been implemented. And so we have been able to work specifically in these organizations, a 644-bed level 1 trauma center, academic organization with 14 specialties, 13 fellowships, another private hospital that was in cooperation with a major teaching university that had 544 beds. And these things that we're going to talk about were effectively applied and grew and bear fruit in those organizations, along with a 20-bed rural community access rural hospital. And so big, little, northern, southern, community hospital, teaching center, even had these elements bear fruit and show effectiveness up in the Northeast with an incredibly inundated union environment. So we had 7 collective bargaining units in that particular hospital, and in these 4 markets, Tennessee, Massachusetts, Virginia, and South Carolina. And the purpose behind this slide is you're not different. So when somebody says, well, we're so-and-so, we're different than everybody else, well, we've already done it there. And the premise kind of worked. The second thing is, okay, so if all hospitals and all clinical processes that we're going to address or talk about and some of the influence and impact, the first thing that you'll get after that is, if my hospital is not different, let me tell you that my patients are different. My patients are sicker than all the other patients everywhere that you've ever been. And you've only been in 4 states, so you haven't possibly been, except for today in this lecture, I get to, well, we've done it in Virginia, and so your patients are no sicker than everybody else. But remember, Mr. O'Neill did say that our leader's job is to remove excuses. I will say that when I got to Columbia, South Carolina, and the medical staff showed up and said, please keep in mind our patients are sicker here. Well, I'd heard that before, right? Like everywhere I've ever been, your patients are sicker, except when I did the math, their patients actually were sicker. So this is actually, I took the heat map off. So this is actually a heat map of the southeastern United States, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. 4 states that have, and I'm sure we can all agree, incredibly healthy human beings in the Southeast that have made good dietary choices, made good lifestyle choices, that all live, the epitome of like what they do in Massachusetts, where they are the #1 state in comorbid conditions listing. Except here, this heat map is the darker the zip code, the darker the little camouflage patterns, the more comorbid conditions the population has. The higher the diabetic rate, the higher high morbid obesity rate, diabetic amputation, all the above. And so the darkest zip code on the whole thing, so this is DeKalb County there in Atlanta, but is this one right here, 29203. And 29203 is where that 644-bed level 1 trauma center that we said in our introduction slide actually sits. So those patients actually are sicker. And so when we start looking at that, we need to talk about 2 economic phenomena here. The first one is when you have a comorbid population that's that intense, it is going to create an inelastic demand curve for services, which just means the more capacity you create, either through efficiency or by bricks and sticks, that comorbid population is going to fill it. It's going to backfill it, no matter how much you bring. And the more that you backfill with sicker people, the higher your labor intensity ratio is going to go. Labor intensity ratio is important for people to understand, because when we start really pushing our foot down on the gas, for more patients through the ER, for door to bed, door to doc, street and street times, we start talking about all those times, or length of stay, we start really pushing on creating capacity through efficiency in either the ER or upstairs. We really are leaning forward in the labor intensity ratio. We're making the jobs of our team harder. What happens then, right? Then they quit. And then we don't have enough of them, and the labor intensity ratio begins to spiral. So we need to keep those 2 things in mind as we continue to go. I do want to spend just a minute talking about how dangerous it is to teach here, like in any hospital in the country. So acute care stay it's like the name of a really bad game show. Like, just for playing the acute care stay, you win a 5.5% risk of an adverse drug reaction, a 17.6% risk of infection, and a 3% risk of a pressure ulcer. And each of those come with an additional couple days length of stay to manage those hospital-acquired conditions. And guess what those additional days length of stay come with? Additional opportunities to win more bonus prizes, which is more days to stay, which means we can get more hospital-acquired conditions, which means we can stay longer and the cycle can continue. And so I think it's important to understand that when I say nothing good happens in an acute care hospital, that the best way to take care of our patients is to find a safe discharge disposition for them It's not a bean counter wanting to drop length of stay because it's great for the finances. It is an absolute patient safety imperative that we manage our length of stay, either the emergency department or upstairs aggressively, because we want to get out of this game show. We don't want to put our patients continued at risk, and just staying here is at risk. So this is a hospital that I had the privilege of working at. When I met them, that's what their leapfrogs were, right? So they were double B, really high inspiring place. This actually, this piece of paper is actually framed on the wall. That was my notepad for my job interview to become the CEO of the hospital. And I walk in, and the medical staff looking at me, and they're asking, so what are you going to do to double our market share in neuroscience? And how are we going to expand our academic footprint? And how are we going to get bigger? And what are you going to do to grow us? And I'm sitting in the interview chair going, you're asking all the wrong questions, because right now you should be asking me, why are we 2 times worse than the national average in MRSA, CAUTIs, bed sores, falls, and surgical site infections? And why do we want to get bigger before we get better? Because all we're really going to do if we get bigger before we get better is make more people sicker faster. So I think we ought to recalibrate the conversation. If you want me to move my family here and be on your leadership team, it should not be with the premise of how are we going to get bigger faster. How are we going to get better faster? And so those were, and then I had like 4 job options, and we picked this one, right? Because this one looked like the most fun. Like, let's go there. And we did have a blast with them. So here's those hospitals. The particular one that we just saw, this is their journey. These bars are their leapfrog composite scores. And so we'll talk just a smidgen about leapfrogs here. And you can see that this is the one we just saw a picture of. This was its sister hospital, just about 15 miles away. And this is where we started with some of the concepts that we're going to talk about today. One was D-rated and one was C double minus. If it crosses this line right here, it gets into the Z category. And if y'all not familiar, every 6 months, Leapfrog does another survey, and they republish their data. So each one of these bars is 6 months. So for my quality, where's my quality people? Let's go. Yeah. So no magic bullet, just incremental improvement every reporting period over and over and over. Because magic bullets are erased, like they're easily washed off, but systemic improvement is repeatable, sustainable, and able to hold it down. And you can see that this really, really bad hospital that we just saw marched up very, very deliberately from D to A, ended up, now they're on their 4th A, and they've won 2 Leapfrog Top Hospital Awards. Same really sick patient, same hospital whose medical staff wanted to grow while we were D-rated, but with a very different focus. And then its sister hospital did the same thing. It went from almost D up to straight A's, and they've won 3 Leapfrog Top hospitals. And eventually we got to work with these other 2 hospitals, and we got them kind of where they needed to be too. So we went from a D and 3 C to 3 A's and a B, and 5 Leapfrog Top Hospital Awards. And that's what it would say behind that black box of attendees. But we're not going to touch the computer. Don't move anything, because everything is working right now. That's what it says, the CCTD to AAAB. Now, two concepts that I want us to agree on. The first one is the single common denominator in every root cause analysis that we've ever done from a harm event. And for those of you that don't play in the quality arena, and maybe you've never done a root cause analysis of a harm event, bottom line is, if something bad happens, we're going to drill it all the way down to what we believe is the root cause. We're going to ask 5 whys. We're going to use all the tools that we have to get to what is the root cause. Why did this happen? So that for the purpose of blaming somebody wrong, for the purpose of ensuring that it never, ever, ever happens again, that we can't hurt anybody else in the same way. And I'm here to say, after 25 years of doing these, that there's one common denominator in all of them. And that's time. In every single one, somebody will have said, I had another patient to get to, something was late, I couldn't get there, I couldn't focus, I had to do something else, I was multitasking, I was seeing 3 people. There was a time element in every one of those RCAs. Sometimes it's more dominant than others, but it's always there. So I agree that Leapfrog isn't the full picture, and we're kind of leaning on leapfrog improvement to kind of show that. But it is a series of what Mr. O'Neill would call inarguable arguments. Like, it measures Claudius collapses. It's on how I got to be you, kind of on slides, so it's on me. MRSA, C. diff, and REVIF. I mean, it's kind of inarguable that doing better in those spaces is good, right? Like, and there's not a lot of argument there. And then doing better in the culture of safety issues is also good. And so when we compare ourselves to others around stuff that we can't argue that doing better in those areas is good, let's not argue about the tool. Because I do find places that want to argue that leapfrog is not the end-all be-all, so let's not use it, except it is just a measurement and a comparison of stuff other people like the way. So let's kind of with that. Leapfrog, it is most highly driven, because I'm not a clinician, right? Is the number one mathematical driver to the leapfrog award, and that's also good stuff to do. But the number one driver inside the number one driver is pressure ulcer. And so, like, nobody should come to our hospital and get a pressure ulcer. Like, that should not ever happen. And so leapfrog recognizes that, and it is the number one driver to those improvements. But I would say if we're all rowing in the same direction, the fact that we just know what our body rate is and what we're doing to impact it is probably a good thing. Leapfrog is not the full picture, but it is full of inarguable arguments. The other truth is, so the first one is common denominator in RCA, high. The second truth is we have the answer to every test already. Like, this is like taking an open book test with every single patient. We were just talking about AI earlier, and these answers were available before artificial intelligence ever presented itself. What do I mean by that? It means that we're taking a Claudia test today. I'm sure that somewhere in this building, or that building, or whichever one it is, there is a patient with an indwelling catheter. And we're taking a catheter-associated urinary tract infection test today if we're preventing a catheter-associated urinary tract infection. And we've been given the answers to the test, right? Evidence-based, best practice. Everybody's checklist looks 95% the same. It looks like that. And I would bet that that's what we're doing here, and I've never seen what we do here. But it's what the evidence says, and it's what almost everybody does. The same is true with centralized associated bloodstream infections, MRSA, falls, happy. We have inequality folks. Don't we all use evidence-based best practice? It's almost all the same, and you just check it off. And when you go to the OR, ARN published it, and you got the answers to those questions. National Association for Emergency Department Physicians, there's probably their safety checklist, and it's evidence-based. And so we've got the answer to every test. So we should ace every single test. We should never have it. So if we've got the answers to every test, and it's evidence-based and everybody knows that it works, and we know that time's an issue, then it must be the people at fault when there's variability in the outcome of how we apply those evidence-based best practices. Again, wrong. I would tell you that this is actually a nurse from one of my hospitals, but she's well-trained, she's compassionate, she cares about people, and she has answers to every test, but her unit has had one of those harm events. Well, why? Well, I know she cares about people, but just like physicians are nurses, there's a lot easier places to make a living if you pass the NCLEX exam and you're a registered nurse in the state of Virginia. You can work for drug companies, you can work for the school system, you can work for lots of places, make a good living, and not work at the bedside in an acute care hospital. That's probably the hardest place as a registered nurse to make a living. So if they've chosen to do that with their life, it's not because they're slouches. So why do they have variability in the outcomes when they have the answers to every test? And they care, and they're trying. Why don't they fully execute that pre-transport catheter bundle to prevent a CODI? Why don't they fully execute a K-card protocol? Why don't they reposition the patient to get a hold of those bed sores or those pressure ulcers? Why don't they execute those deliberate hourly rounds? Because I'm sure we do hourly rounds, right? Everybody does hourly rounds, but do we fully do it? So what's the driver in variability? back to the common denominator in those RCAs, time. We go back to what Mr. O'Neill said, and that is organizations cannot be compartmentally excellent. So if we're not habitually applying the rules to those tests to every opportunity that we have, are we attempting to be compartmentally excellent? And the leader's job is to remove those excuses. So what if the excuses we need to remove are our own? So especially as senior leaders, right? Like a senior leader's job, like when I interviewed for that role, right? The physicians want to know what I was going to do about macro stuff. What was I going to do about growing market share? What was I going to do about expanding our academic footprint? Not what was I going to do about auditing and collapses and quality? That's what it should have been. My medical staff's questions and concerns are stuff that talk about the OR, not stuff about that happens on the floor. And community business development, market share, and board management, those are all more important than addressing the time aspect, or are they? And if the senior leader is not focused if their eye's not on that ball, nobody else's eye will be either. The team will focus where their leaders are focused. So I'm passionate that senior leaders in healthcare organizations and complex institutions like this understand that organizations can't be compartmentally excellent, and our eye always has to be on the quality ball. I learned what I'm about to share with you from this guy, like really compassionate looking fellow, right? So Lieutenant General John Diedrich ended up running the Special Operations Command. He got a great YouTube vignette on why he likes to operate, why he considers himself an operator. And his operations were a little different than operations. So he's wearing a Special Forces tab, a Ranger tab, and an Airborne tab, and a spearhead on his shoulder. So that might be slightly different. But I got to hear him speak when I would have the privilege of serving. I was an Airborne Ranger in the infantry and served under General Dietrich in Special Operations Command. And I heard General Dietrich talk to this unit. And this is the 95th support unit. Now, this unit, think of the 95th support unit as the ancillary and support services of Special Forces. Like, these are the folks that make sure your parachute's packed and it's going to open. These are the folks that make sure your observation devices you're going to be able to see through. That your weapon is going to fire when you need it to fire. That you have the stuff you need and it's where you need it when you need it. So he's talking to the ancillary and support services. And then this quote, and I really need to be able to read that quote. If that box moves, if not, I know it pretty much by the back of my heart. Yeah, there you go. He delivered this quote to that ancillary and support services unit. And if you change the word units to hospitals, I think it really applies for us and all of our team members that we all lead. He said, I would say that if we think of our units or hospitals in the same terms that President Roosevelt espoused for individual behavior. So at the individual level, we're going to strive to do our best each day. We accept that it's going to be hard, a hard road to travel. But we know that in the end, it's an unending effort. And this is the key. The ability to do routine things routinely well makes good units into great units. And Joe Dietrich continued, and he said, if we strive to do this well, we'll not only keep the ancillary and support services units great, but we will continue to help our Army Special Operations Force comrades remain great as well. What in the world does any of this have to do with hospitals and what it is we're talking about? Well, the question would be, who are our Special Forces units and what maketh a Special Forces soldier, a Special Forces team? Well, they're special because they can do stuff that only they can do. That there's a very small percentage of the population that can do what it is they can do. Like, they can step out of an aircraft at 2,000 feet in the middle of the night, land safely, do something really, 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 really hard, and make it safely back home. I'd say there's a small percentage of the population that can do that, which is why we call them special. When we look to our left and our right, as we walk up and down the halls of centers like this, I would say that we have our own Special Forces operators amongst us. Folks to our left and our right that are a very small percentage of the population that are doing things that only he or she can do. Therefore, our ancillary and support services departments, enabling them to be the very best that they can be, are the difference makers between us being good and us being great. Because good units do incredible hard stuff routinely well. No, good units do routine things routinely well. What are our routine things in a hospital? I would say a bench turnaround is fairly routine, right? Like they do that at a hotel. Somebody checks out, somebody shows up, we clean the room, put the room back in service, somebody else can check in. I would say delivering a dietary tray is fairly routine. Somebody orders food, we prepare a tray, we take it up there, it's fairly routine. So are all these other things. I mean, a flat chest panel in the ER isn't routine. Labs, being on the chart, 7:30 in med-surg, 6:30 in critical care, routine. Patient transport, moving point A to point B, routine. Supply chain, all this stuff's where it's supposed to be all the time. Pharmacy, like, it would be amazing if you took a poll, and I challenge you guys to do it someday. Of all the RNs here, how many of them only went to one Pyxis machine? Are we Pyxis or Omnicell? We're Pyxis. How many of them went to more than one Pyxis machine to do a med pass? So the answer is all of them. But why? Why should they have to run from machine to machine to do a med pass? So all those things are routine things. And what about yours? What are the physicians' routine things that should be done routinely well? I don't know, because I'm not one. But you might. And are you accomplishing those routine things routinely well? Here's the essence of it. I say that the secret ingredient, the clinical quality in the acute care setting is pancake syrup. Now don't laugh at me. Jess, come on. Why can't that? Here's why pancake syrup. Great question. So these are real numbers. I took over a hospital, 600 bed, big place, struggling. And the day I took the hospital over, they delivered 1,836 dietary trays. 64% were late. All right. So I went to West Virginia University, and I'm an infantry guy. An infantry guy in West Virginia, let's make the math easier. Then there were 1,000 trays, and 60% were late. That is 600 late trays, right? Everybody following the math with me? This particular hospital was in the Southeast, so their patients were very genteel and nice. So only a third of them even made mention of their late tray. How many is that? 200. We're at 200 complaints over just dietary trays in one 24-hour period. How does a patient complain? Well, they push a button, right? It's a button that is tethered to the side of the bed. And we tell them every day, if you need something, push the button. All right, so now they're pushing the button and they're asking about the dietary tray. What's the root cause? What is the common denominator in all the root causes for harm events? Time. What happens for the next 10 to 15 minutes because of that late dietary tray? Compassionate, caring, NCLEX passing, competent, registered nurse is taking 10 to 15 minutes to go to the bedside, learn that the dietary tray is late, go back to the nurse's station, call somebody, ask them where the dietary tray is. They do service recovery. They make sure the tray gets there and they burn up 10 to 15 minutes. What did they not do in the 10 to 15 minutes they were messing around with dietary shop? Execute the answers that the answer key has for them to every test we give them every shift. Extrapolate that to all those routine things that our ancillary support services do every day. Tennessee, Virginia, Massachusetts, and South Carolina, we've confirmed this number 4 times. They get between 2.75 and 3.16 hours a day per shift back to every nurse. If you gave every nurse 3 hours a day back, how often and how consistently could they execute the checklist that we all know work? So why is pancake syrup the solution? Because if I deliver pancakes and there's no syrup on it, somebody's going to push that button. And as soon as they push that button, I just lost 15 minutes of harm prevention. If a nurse is going to 3 Pyxis machines to pass his or her meds, she's given up 7 to 10 minutes. If she goes to get a 4x4 out of the supply machine, picks a supply tube, Omnicell supply, if I go to 3 machines to get a 4x4, I'm waiting on transport and I have to answer a call because transport's late. If the labs aren't on the chart at 7:30 when the hospitalist rounds, I mean, average hospitalist in an average hospital has 18 to 21 patients on their census per day. If they go see Mrs. Jones first and the labs aren't there and they don't have the information they need for care progression or discharge disposition decision, they're not coming back. And guess what? Mrs. Jones just won in our game show. Another day's length of stay where they have a 5.1% chance of an adverse drug event or 17.6% chance of an infection. The infection is directly resulting caused by the fact the labs weren't there. Well, Mrs. Jones could have been home. That's why pancake syrup, and that's why going from good to great is oftentimes doing routine things routinely well. What do I do with those 3 hours? I answer yes to every question on that test. Then I have the ability to actually be a charge nurse that can lead and not fight fires. Right? We have charge nurses, and the charge nurse is supposed to be teaching, coaching, mentoring, solving very hard clinical deals, and not looking for pancake syrup. We have the ability to make sure our whiteboards are right, that we're doing hourly rounding, that we're doing bedside shift report. We present harm and we impact that common theme. So why don't I do that stuff? Because sometimes as organizations, we don't do routine things routinely well. Mr. O'Neill taught us ways you can't be departmentally excellent. You can't say I'm an amazing trauma center if you can't deliver dietary trade. Because the nurse is a critical part of that trauma team, and he or she is oftentimes doing somebody else's job because we haven't focused on learning how to do routine things routinely well. So how do you get there? It brings us to the second point that Mr. O'Neill left me with, and that is with leadership, anything is possible, and without it, nothing is. Because until the CEO cares, or until the leaders care about labs on the chart, it's just going to be another thing. Until I make it a daily deal about how we did with dietary trade delivery, it's going to be another thing. I have to believe, because if I don't truly believe that there's a correlation between my CAUTI rate and my dietary trade delivery completion rate, if I don't truly believe that, who else is going to buy that? I tell you who bought it. There was a guy named Ricardo. Ricky was an environmental services tech when I was the EVP and COO of Cape Cod Healthcare. And the administrative suite was here, 2 West was here. For me to get into my car when we were in surge, I had to walk through 2 West to get to the exit. I'm leaving one afternoon, and there's Ricardo. He's been there for 19 and a half years. And I said, Ricky, what were your numbers last night? And he said, Mikey, 47 and 98. Now, kid, this is a environmental services tech. This is the manager of environmental services. What does that mean, Ricky? Well, 98% of our beds were complete on time, and 47 minutes was their average turn time. Ricky, why is that important? That means nobody was puking in a bucket, Mikey. And I went, whoa, help me with that. And he said, Mikey, if I get my beds done and they're done right, that means there's nobody in the ER waiting on my bed. If there's nobody in the ER waiting on my bed, there's nobody in the ER waiting room waiting on their bed. If there's nobody in the ER waiting room, nobody puking in the bucket. Ricky was an environmental services tech who showed up to do something that was meaningful to his life. He wasn't cleaning rooms. If he wanted to clean rooms, he could work at the Holiday Inn. Ricky was creating access to healthcare, and he knew it. That's doing routine things routinely well. So when leadership engages here, you have the ability to do special stuff. I got 12 minutes. What does it mean to a CEO? The first thing is a CEO's first cup stack changes dramatically. What is a first cup stack? A first cup stack is the stack of data points. It is the data input that I consume every day with my first cup of coffee. Every CEO's got one. Some of them read the headlines from the Times. Some of them read their transfer metrics. I'm worried about dietary trades. and labs on the chart because I know those things will directly impact my patient. Because if I get those things right, I'm executing those checklists and I know my patients will be safer. Management processes and daily transparent reporting become granular in new and different places. They become more connected and less compartmentalized. It is important that everybody knows how everybody's doing in their process that impacts our patient. That leadership in safety huddle becomes critical, and their engagement in each one of these core metrics, because I believe these 13 things being done routinely well are core metrics, has to be driven by their leadership, not just their attendance. Leaders have to lead PI methodology after the Hawthorne effect. Everybody knows what the Hawthorne effect is. So the Hawthorne effect is if we're focused on something and everybody knows we're focused on it, we turn the lights on it, it's going to get better. Because people are just going to work harder at it because they know everybody's looking at it, but that's not sustainable. It burns out. So leaders have to lead through the Hawthorne effect, and you have to reinforce the why in everything they do. So this is the typical first cup stack. Normal CEOs will look at, did we have a safety event? Did we have an employee injury? Did we go in diversion? What's our OR look like? And then what I would argue is that's important. All that stuff it's important. But these are the things that drive even those things. So I believe that in 25 minutes, I should be able, as the leader, I should be able to digest this and digest this and understand this isn't a right or wrong checklist. Our organization may have to add or subtract things from our first cup stack, depending on how well we are or are not doing in a certain area. If we're really good at dietary trades and really bad at supply chain, we might have to focus daily work around supply chain if that's where our clinicians are losing their time. Nothing worse than a surgeon trying to do surgery when the pack's not right. Right? Like they get in the OR, everything's ready to go. They open the pack and it's not got the right stuff in it. Now you got all kinds of problems, patients already asleep, blah, blah, blah. So lots of these things that I'm saying, people with gray hair and glasses, men and women leading organizations should have their fingers on the pulse of, as well as traditional stuff. And then you start looking at more complex things, and it's all designed to happen in 25 minutes or less, which is making sure the right patients at the right hospital in the right unit, and that our behavioral health departments have gotten our ERs cleaned out, and that our critical resources have been cross-leveled and all that stuff. But keep in mind, the largest portion of the first cup stack is at very granular daily processes and why they are important to us. And as our leaders look at that, so will our teams. It's not a series of benign reports. This becomes a normal conversation about how I or the chain of command can support the leaders of these routine processes to be incredibly habitually excellent every single day that they show up at work. It's not a gotcha thing. It's not the dietary guy or girl going, oh my God, we were 12% out. I got to hide from BUNDY. This is, hey, we were 12% out and I don't know why. Can somebody help me? And the maintenance guy stands up and goes, well, we did have 3 of our 7 elevators down, so it probably was hard for you to get dietary trays up a 10-story building on time. So the root cause of that was the elevator guy. It was still causing the nurse time. But now I got to make sure the elevator guy's getting squared away. That's the kind of conversations we need to have every day that's interactive and purposeful. And to sustain a culture, to sustain that, we have to connect all of those to patient safety, or people just think they're doing them. Now, it doesn't require a $2 billion investment in artificial intelligence or advanced AI. This is routine things done routinely well nursing. This is staffing levels for a 300-bed hospital, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't take Chronos. It doesn't take any systems. It just takes somebody to write it down and distribute it to all the necessary people. Who's all the necessary people? Everybody. If you run a process that touches a patient, you should get all of it. This is important because I can walk through here, and you put the guys in West Virginia, and I can go, where's the problem? You've never seen this before. Where's the problem? The red block, right? So I know now, because I looked at the red block, that 8th Oncology has got 4 RNs plus a charge for 20 patients. They got 24 occupied beds and 20 staffed beds. Well, that's a problem. Why is it important that this goes out to lots of people? Because if you're the dietary worker and you're the dietary leader and you have to prioritize who gets service recovery and who gets effort first today, 8th oncology. They don't have time to answer a call bell because they're already 4 beds overstaffed, 4 beds understaffed. This is the lab. This is a daily report from the lab. Where's the problem? Easy to figure out, right? You're looking at a whole bunch of metrics. You got 25 minutes. Easy to figure out. Easy to see what they're doing about it. Move on. This is important. We'll come back to it. This is routine stuff for food service, right? 1,100. Uh-oh. Thank God the button worked backwards. 1,180. We don't do good with IT stuff. So 1,187 trays. 1,122 trays. 93% on time. Not a big red number anywhere. Move on. But if there was, here's their sub. This is how I know they know what they're doing. They know how long it took them to prep lunch per tray. To them, this is like cardiovascular surgery. They got it broken down into 20 steps. It's that important to them because they don't want to cost a nurse or a clinician any of their time to answer the tests right. They don't want to be part of the root cause of a hospital-acquired condition. So they understand their process at the very granular level. And then visual management is amazingly important so that everybody understands what it is everybody else is doing and how we can help them. The key to culture is it's not about gotcha. It's about if you're having a bad process day, what resources can I bring to you? Can your chain of command bring to you? Can other departments like the elevator guy bring to you to make you incredibly successful and habitually excellent? So if you look, this is actually the laboratory in a pretty big hospital. And this is 2019, but it hadn't changed any. Like you don't need a jumbotron to do this. The dry erase board. So that they know exactly where their percentages were and where they had problems and what they did to solve their problem in those days. Now, this goes out. This is a compilation of routine things being done routinely well. It comes off an Access database and it populates in Excel. It costs almost nothing to implement. And it goes to everybody, every single member of the medical staff. If you supervise a human being, you get this every day. And a couple of reasons why. First one is when a physician has late labs and their information isn't there and you don't do this, guess what the perceived frequency is of late labs? All the time. This place never has the labs well on track when I need them. But when you do this and you tell them every single day the labs are 97%, you may buy yourself a little grace. The one day lab turns red. And they go, well, it was my day. You may not, but you may. And I put complex and routine processes right beside each other because I believe they are the exact same causality to those hospital-acquired conditions. And that's the level of detail that goes into the lab report that feeds the one line in lab every single day. And there's one of those for every one of those. And then it just becomes a very easy, manageable operating system where what we need you to do is deliver doctor training. What we need you to do nursing is discharge patients 120 minutes from the time the order's done. And those things, those daily management reports become monthly director scorecards and conversations around our one-on-ones, and they just feed into our balanced scorecard for the organization, and it becomes the overall scorecard for the organization, and it funnels back to doing routine things routinely well. If there's animation on the slide, it means I didn't make it, so you shouldn't pay attention to it. The next thing is celebrate, and celebrate. When one of your departments, one of our departments, maintains its metric for the first 90 days, we build them a storyboard, and the storyboard goes out throughout the hospital so everybody knows what their contributions are and how it ties into humans, taking incredibly good care of other humans. And don't hire models. Use your team. We have beautiful people who are giving their lives to help others and celebrate them in this way. Teams love it. My employees will all quit. Your employees won't all quit. They won't. Some will self-select out. Not many. And I believe this is why. There's another West Virginian who says there's two pains in life. There's the pain of discipline. Yeah, this is a disciplined approach to how to run an organization. We're going to measure everything every day. We're going to transparently show it to everybody. We're going to fix it all in real time. That takes a lot of discipline. There's the pain of discipline and the pain of disappointment. If you can handle the pain of discipline, I think, Nick, I would argue with Nikki over a beer that never might be a long time. I would say that the level of disappointment you have to learn to manage to go down. And then as we do routine things routinely well, this is the challenge for this audience. I think we got a hard stop at one, right? Like that, Bill. As we do routine stuff routinely well, it's easy for us to say, by golly, we're going to make sure dietary's got their processes squared away and they're good to go. Well, nursing, you're not exempt. If you get those 2 to 3 hours back, the expectation that you execute those checklists consistently should be there. We should be able to determine what your routine things are. Discharging a patient should be a routine thing. Therefore, we should be able to say that 90% of the time, we should be able to discharge patients within 120 minutes of that order dropping. By the way, the labs are on the chart at 7:30 when the hospitalist round, so the order should drop by 8, which means when you get busy at 3, you've got capacity to put people upstairs, except we moved everything forward. And physicians, you're not exempt either. There are routine things that you do as you routinely care for other human beings amazingly well that can be done and honed and perfected to be done routinely well. What are they? They're different in every one of your specialties. My challenge to you is, what are they? One of my favorite things that happened in Baptist, the Double D Hospital, remember the Double D Hospital we started with? Was when this began progressing, I was doing my first cup stack, having my happy day, taking to that hospital. Told me as he crossed the street, the crosswalk wasn't in the right place and I needed to get it fixed or someone was going to get hurt. He hadn't even been there. He'd already fixed safety. I was having my cup of coffee, and Anthony Zamchos, my chief hospitalist, sent out an email to all hospitalist doctors that said, we better rake our leaves. And he wrote a nice memo about what rake your leaves meant. Raking your leaves, and it's false. It's very appropriate. Like, you can't yell at your neighbors for not raking their leaves if you haven't raked your leaves up, because all your leaves you're going to do is flow into their yard. Right? And so what Dr. Zamcho got was, hey, dietary is a neighbor. They've raked their leaves. Pharmacy is a neighbor. They've raked their leaves. Nursing's a neighbor. They've raked their leaves. If we don't figure out how to rake our leaves, Bundy's going to tell us how to rake our leaves. So let's figure it out ourselves, come up with what our routine things are that need to be done routinely well and how to measure them before some administrator tells us how to do it. I didn't have to tell him to do that. I thought that was great. But the moral of the story and the purpose of the flight is it doesn't stop at our ancillary and support units. And I would tell you that, and we can end on this, because I know we've got a hard stop. I would tell you that what Mr. O'Neill said is that in really great organizations, an incredibly habitually excellent organization, our team members can answer yes to 3 questions. I introduced you to one of the 3 earlier. The first one is that one, right? Can I say yes to this? I am treated with dignity and respect by every person I encounter without regard to race, gender, educational attainment, rank, or any other distinguishing feature. Ricardo is just as important and his contribution is just as important as the chief of orthopedic surgery. And that's how they feel. Second one is, I'm given the tools, training, resources, and encouragement to make a contribution to the organization that adds meaning to my life. Think about Ricardo. He's not cleaning beds at the Holiday Inn. Ricardo is doing something that brought meaning to his life. He was keeping people from being sick in the emergency department waiting room and getting access to care. And then I'm recognized for the contribution by someone whose opinion matters to me each day. Physicians, I know there's a lot of you here and online, listen to me. You are someone that matters to them. 1 second, once a day, to somebody that does routine things in support of your practice can change their outlook on what they do. It means more from you than it does the CEO. Because you actually have talent and skills that other people don't have. I don't. So I challenge you for bullet 3. Take away that you can't fix that stuff. Claudius, collapses, readmissions, PSI 90 composites, all that other stuff, mortality index, unless you fix this stuff. That routine things that are done routinely well. And every single one of our teammates has a mission that's tied directly to our quality. And that's it. And upon the last time we did this, all that stuff got better. My CFO quit because we were $80 million in the hole. I told him we weren't going to look at numbers for the first 90 to 120 days. Ken will tell you that is absolutely true. We did a $300 million turnaround in that market. In the first year, that one institution did $113 million by focusing on dietary trays. Why? Because it becomes a recruiting tool. Your patients are 3 times less likely to get an infection at my hospital than if you take them across the street. Why would you ever go across the street? End of recruiting dinner. We already talked about that. Those are all routine things that they did good. Got to manage through the Hawthorne effect. I do want to show this one because this is important. And I'll close with this. It's a downward spiral if you don't do this thing. If you don't do this thing, our patients win that game show, which is additional day length of stay. And this is what happens when the additional day length of stay, and it's not my opinion. The excess length of stay attributable to hospital-acquired infections is 7.8 days. Now, CFO people, a cost of a patient's stay is blended average $1,000. You just added $8,000 to a patient, you get a blended reimbursement of $7,200. Doesn't take West Virginia math to figure out we just lost money on the patient's stay. Also, with a 95% confidence interval, they got sick as they continued to downward spiral. The greatest impact on length of stay was pneumonia, central line associated bloodstream infections, surgical site infections, all hospital acquired stuff, because a lot of folks don't focus on doing routine things routinely well. So the best infection prevention measure I can tell you is a safe discharge disposition. Because if I ain't here, you can't get a hospital acquired condition if you're not in the hospital. So Mr. O'Neill said, look at these thoughts that he put together. This book's still free, online. It's amazing. It really changed the trajectory of my life and how I manage hospitals. And somebody else said pretty much the same thing like a long time ago. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but becomes a habit. And that's playbook a little bit to excellence. So thank you all. Sorry that I was 5 minutes late. Remember, time, routine things done well. I think that can impact an organization in a great way. I appreciate your all's attention.